120 rocket and cannon holes in the ship. There were approximately 5,000 50 caliber armor-piercing bullets in the ship. And they also fired napalm at us. They dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship. As we were trying to get the dead and the wounded off the decks, they would fire at us. The crew of 294, there was 172 wounded, and 34 killed, and since then, probably 50 or 60 of those have passed from their wounds. About 15 minutes into the attack, we got a word out to the 6th Fleet. We were under attack by unknown jet aircraft. They had colored their planes and marked out the Star of David. There was no markings on these planes. We didn't know who was attacking us. And we called the USS Saratoga and the USS America. Captain Tully launched immediately. Ready aircraft. Now these were conventional aircraft. They weren't nuclear tipped, and they were on their way to help us. McNamara gets on the phone and says, "Send those planes back. Bring them back. Bring them back." Now, he said in the war room, "We're not going to attack our ally Israel." Now, we didn't know who was attacking us, because they were unmarked planes. How did they know who was attacking us? The USS America sent aircraft out of their planes, off their aircraft carrier. They were nuclear tipped. They were going to incinerate Egypt. McNamara, again, he called those planes back. Admiral Geist said, "I want to rearm and go to the Liberty's defense. They're still under attack." This is about probably 45 minutes into the attack. With the holes in the ship and the damage that was done, the experts said it had to be at least 12 to 18 aircraft that attacked us. About 50 minutes, 60 minutes into the attack, here comes 3 motor torpedo boats. And they got in a torpedo mode. There was like a torpedo boat here, one behind it and one behind it. They had 2 torpedoes on each boat, 6 total. They fired 5 torpedoes and one didn't go off. And 5 torpedoes came at us at one time. 2 went aft. I believe one went forward, and the other one, I don't know where it went, but I do know where the last one went. It hit in the research bases below the waterline, instantly blowing to bits 25 American sailors. The impact of the torpedo was so great, it picked the ship completely up out of the water. And it just went back down. The ship was just like weeping. It was hurt so bad. We started listing and listing and listing, and I thought the ship was going to roll over. But it didn't. It started to stabilize. I was ordered to the bridge to help put out fires, and we didn't have any water pressure because they put holes in most of our fire hoses. Besides that, our pumps weren't working properly, so we couldn't pump as much water as we needed. We were basically just dead in the water. Got to the bridge, had 2 CO2 bottles, and trying to put out the napalm, and it was impossible. You couldn't put that stuff out. It just jellied in and keep on burning. And I'll never forget, I looked over at the helmsman. He was a very good friend of mine. His name was Francis Brown. I met him when I first got aboard the ship in 1965. We were good buddies. We used to play pool together and everything like that. And he was one of the most well-liked men aboard the ship. And I looked at him, as I was getting ready to go down the passageway and get another CO2 bottle, I looked directly in his eyes, and he looked at me and didn't say a word, and he didn't say a word. I went back down, got what CO2 bottles I could. I came back up, and I got on the bridge, the deck, and there was blood all over, and I flew up, slipped, and fell on my back. And it was Francis Brown's blood. A 50 caliber bullet came and blew off the back of his head. The captain at that time had been injured. There were still dead and wounded on the main deck and on the second level. The 50-gallon cans of gasoline we had on the ship, they were on fire or they were burning. And the torpedo boats would circle the ship and shoot at our firefighters and stretcher bearers. They wanted us all dead. They wanted us all murdered. Our government abandoned us when we needed them the most 40 years ago, and they abandoned us. They're still abandoning us to this day. This government was stabbed in the back by the government of Israel, and our government helped put a knife in their own back. And whenever Israel wants something, all they got to do is just twist that knife a little bit more, and they get what they want. I remember talking to Admiral Moore. He was one of our greatest supporters on this issue. He told me, Phil, he says, during the Yom Kippur War, the ambassador of Israel came to me. He was the Joint Chiefs of Staff then. He says, Phil, he says, I need this from you, and I need this from you, and I need this from you. He says, well, I can't give you all that. He says, we need it for other things, for Vietnam or whatever. And he says, don't you worry about the Congress. You just get what I want. And he was ordered the next day to give the Israelis anything they wanted, taking away from our fighting men. And 2 days after that, or the next morning, the USS America and the USS Davis and the USS Massey got to us, 18 hours after the attack. So they left us out there. They didn't even send a Piper Cub to see how we were doing. I mean, they could have sent at least one airplane to give us direction. Our compasses were out. We had nothing. We were sailing by the stars. But our country left us there. They made the decision, hopefully, they thought we were going to break up in the middle of the night and all of us die. But we thought the Israelis were going to come back and get us. But they didn't, because the word was out. We knew who attacked us. About 15 minutes after the torpedo boats left, they sent 2 helicopters with commandos in them, ready to board our ship to finish us off. They circled the ship. One got close to the Vauxhall, and I was looking him right in the eyeball. And he was looking at me, and I went, just like that. And he replied with the same finger. But they did not board our ship. Like I say, the next day the Massey came by, the Davis came by. They got the dead and the wounded off, and the most seriously wounded. So they said, go to Malta, which was a 7-day trip from where we were to Malta, and they could have sent us to Crete, but it was only 3 days. Why they did that, I don't know. But the USS Papago was behind us, a fleet tug, and they were picking up papers, pieces of bodies. There were 6 bodies that floated out they never did find. And there was a mass grave in Arlington honoring their sacrifice. I was ordered by an Admiral Kidd when he came aboard our ship. I told him what he did. He got 4 or 5 of us in a group. He took off his stars. This was in sick bay at the time. I remember he threw them on the table. It was a stainless steel table, and it rang. And he says, you guys talk to me just like, I'm a regular sailor. Tell us what happened, what you saw. Did you see any markings? So on and so forth. We told him exactly what we saw. He put his stars back on. He says, now I'm my admiral again. And I'm telling you, if you ever breathe a word of this to your parents, to the press, to your shipmates, to anybody, I'll make sure you either go to prison or worse. And everybody else knew